Welcome to In the Flow, where we explore how marketing leaders leverage operations to eliminate chaos and capture opportunity. I'm Anthony Welgemoed, CEO of Ziflow. Welcome to In the Flow. Today's episode genuinely has a bit of everything. We're going to talk about home makeovers, Shark Tank deals, rocket launches, solar eclipses, live broadcasts with no second takes, and what it means to tell stories when millions are watching. It's not just all fun. We'll get into purpose-driven work, creative pressure, imposter syndrome, and the idea of designing everything around a single moment that really matters. If you're into creativity, storytelling, marketing operations, or just how big moments actually get made, this episode's for you. Our guest today is Sami Aziz. Sami has had a front row seat to all of this and has literally just wrapped up an incredible run with NASA as head of live broadcast and events. Sami, welcome to the show, and please take us back and just tell us a little bit about how you launched this amazing career.
Well, thank you for having me, Ant. Happy to be here. It has been quite the career so far. I'm really happy to be exactly where I am right now. Um, I would say I'm a fortunate person to have had this many what I call dream roles, but it's also something that you kind of let one thing guide you to the next. At one point in time, I wanted to be a pediatrician and I wanted to be a doctor and help people. And I kind of got caught up in the circus of things. I got picked up by Extreme Makeover Home Edition as a production assistant, and that's when I was also thinking about attending Boston University for grad school in epidemiology and international health. And then this crazy opportunity fell on my lap, and I took it, and I really ran with it. And I left Extreme Makeover 4 years later as a producer on the show with Ty Pennington and all the designers. From there, I got to work on some really cool shows for National Geographic, game shows, competition series, and then ultimately Shark Tank for 10 years. After that, I got picked up by NASA when they were really looking to elevate their content and their creative. And I got thrust into the world of space travel and live at a global scale. And it really has been a defining moment in my career. The through line of all of this has been purpose-driven, mission-driven work and work that kind of moves the needle and moves humanity forward. It's work that I'm really proud of. And I made this promise to myself almost 20 years ago was if you're going to go this route, make sure you're proud of the work you're doing. Make sure you're still helping because at once upon a time I wanted to be that doctor. So I feel like I have this duty to still contribute and to make the world a little bit better of a place. So if that means good content and making people laugh and cry and learn, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I think great creative and that sort of that entertainment, it just gives people something else to focus on, versus the worries of the day and so on. Um, you know, I sort of spent 8 hours watching your 4K, fireplace video on the NASA website. That rocket one. I know we spoke a little bit about it just before this call. Just tell me quickly how you got to that video and that idea.
That's a funny one. I mean, I think everyone's familiar with the Yule log fireplace. You can put a fireplace up on your television, and it kind of gives that illusion of warmth. And if you really search on YouTube, you'll see that some of them have tens of millions of views. And I was out on a run one day last holiday season, and I had this vision. I'm like, we're about to launch this rocket to the moon with humans aboard, and it's at the time the most powerful rocket ever launched. How cool would it be to encapsulate that in a fireplace and just make like the NASA version of a Yule log? So I worked with one of my editors, Chris, who's extremely talented. And I said, I kind of conceived this idea and I said, put it in a hearth, make sure there's a roar, make sure there's a crackle. Let's make it 4K. Let's use real authentic at NASA. It's really important to use authentic footage and kind of loop. So the rocket is so big, it's so powerful. It takes 2 seconds to get off the pad. So we grabbed those 2 seconds and just looped them for 8 hours, added the
Oh, wow.
crackle, added that kind of glow, and then added a couple of picture frames, one with Artemis and one with um, a photo from the actual mission of the Orion spacecraft looking back at the moon, looking back at Earth, kind of like a selfie of itself. And the idea being at NASA, there's a lot of room and space between missions, and how do you keep that energy alive? How do you keep people interested in what you're doing in those years? So this was a really low impact or high impact, low lift build that we made, and we released it. Just a little bit of festive fun for the holiday season. It ended up getting a lot of views. It went moderately viral, but it got picked up by like 20 different media outlets. Like NASA embraces
Brilliant.
the holiday spirit, NASA embraces the Yule log, and it was really cool. And you also learned something along the way. So it was NASA has a lot of room for that, a lot of creative room because you're constantly thinking about the tax-paying public and how to be smart with money. Uh, so you have to be responsible with it, and that's one of those like high impact, low lift edits that can really resonate.
And I think so, I was obviously watching that channel, and I think something that's also really interesting on it is all these little educational pieces. Something I read in that Bill Bryson book, that short history of nearly everything, is that we are all made of stardust, and if you think about the whole space, that is our ancestry, if you will. So there's actually quite a good link. But it's quite interesting. You've gone from sort of like non-government work into government, and you sort of worked on that whole solar eclipse coverage, and you won an Emmy for that. So and congrats for that. And I just love to know a little bit more about about that broadcast. Well, what it took to actually put it together, because it's quite a it's a really long broadcast, and you have to. It feels like you got to get this perfect. It's happening sort of live, and it's right there and then.
Yeah, we actually won 2 Emmys for that one. One just
Wow.
came in
Okay.
in December, which was incredible. One of them was Outstanding Live News Special, the other one was, Excellence in Production Technology Application. And when I joined NASA, I had 4 Emmys under my belt for my work on Shark Tank, so I felt very accomplished, but it's one thing to be part of an Emmy-winning team, and you kind of go on stage and you contributed to the effort and you get to take home a statue. It's another to conceive an idea, to build it, to execute it, and then to lead that team to victory. And that is something that my work at NASA allowed me to do is to actually build this enormous thing, this once, in a very rare while thing, the celestial event. And I think one of the beautiful things about being a producer is you get to dip your toe in a lot of things. And I've gotten to dip my toe in home building, in entrepreneurship. I've worked with athletes and musicians, chefs, A-list celebrities, everybody, and now scientists. And so when you get to learn about everything you're doing and become kind of a master at it. So when this one was presented, it was we want to tell the story of this eclipse going over North America. And I first had to wrap my head around it and understand, why is this a big deal? Why are we spending money on this as NASA? This is not a mission, right? We're not building anything. And then I understood that NASA doesn't own the sun, but it does a really good job of telling its story. We have the subject matter experts. Um, People kind of look to NASA to build on that story. So I understood the gravity of the moment, and it took about 18 months to put that together. I just started thinking kind of out of the box, like what is the best way to tell this story? And I referenced the 2017 solar eclipse, and it was kind of a hopscotch approach, the last eclipse across America. And I said, I think we can do one better than this. What if we kept all sites live the entire time? What if we were able to ping pong between them? And what if we did it all via IP, Internet Protocol? So no satellite trucks, but that would be a huge savings to the taxpayer. So what we conceived was a live broadcast spanning 3 hours from Mazatlan, Mexico to Holton, Maine. And across that path, we set up an entire telescope feed, and I sent correspondents to 11 different locations along the path. And I anchored the broadcast. The main anchor, the main control room was in Cleveland, Ohio. I kind of looked, I'm like, this feels about geographically in the middle, but more importantly, this is where Glenn Research Center is. A NASA center is actually on the path of totality. So it makes a lot of sense. So down the road from Glenn is Great Lakes Science Center. That's also where the visitor center for NASA Glenn is located. And we kind of built the broadcast there. There were a lot of doubters at first who said, Sammy, why are you going to anchor the broadcast in Cleveland? It's cloudy there. Your chances of a sunny day, like you're setting yourself up for potential failure. But I thought it was too important to ignore the fact that we had a NASA center there, and that would be a really great location to look towards Mazatlan and then look towards Holton. We're kind of right in the middle. It was a risk, and it ended up being a beautifully sunny day, which was one of those risks that you had to take in production. Um, but it ended up being NASA's most complex and ambitious broadcast ever attempted. Like, more technically ambitious and complex than anything it had done before. And the reason is because we had 70 live feeds, we had 3,000 miles to cover, we had those 11 correspondents, technically 38 encoders, 35 decoders. We had live feeds from the International Space Station, live, talking to astronauts and getting those feeds. And also, we sent up a high altitude research aircraft to get views once the eclipse made landfall. That was really cool. And it was a pilot showing the eclipse and the moon shadow hitting Mazatlan, Mexico. So that's kind of,
Yeah, and you can see it
yeah,
move, right? Yeah.
yeah, you can see it move. It's this incredible moment, and the way we did that was the pilot was using an iPhone connected to Microsoft Teams, and we were beaming down that signal with Starlink. We were able to pick it up on the ground side and incorporate it into the broadcast. So all of this was put together at an incredible scale, and again, all via public internet, so that we weren't using those costly satellite trucks, and it was a big savings. It was absolutely justifiable to the taxpaying public, and it was a landmark in television production, live television production. Because essentially what you're doing is you're chasing the moon's shadow across a continent
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
1,100 miles per hour. It's like a marathon. It's like an Olympic opening ceremony. It's like
Yeah.
an Ironman. Like, it's big, and you can't fail. Like, you have to hit that totality. And if you've never experienced one, it is one of the coolest, most life-changing things you can experience.
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I don't have maybe the exact number of years, but I mean, it'll only happen in North America or specific, like that in 100 or hundreds of years. It happens, the eclipse happens semi-regularly, but happening in that location, yeah, I mean, it'll be once in a
Exactly.
lifetime.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Like, it
that's
changes its course. We have a whole department at NASA called heliophysics, and you can look that up, and they'll tell you exactly all the eclipses. A lot happen over the ocean. There's different kinds, but this scale, where it's going over large populations and known cities across a continent, those are a little bit more rare. So there's a big one happening on the Iberian Peninsula, in Spain next year. But for it to cross North America, I think it's going to be a little while before we see one again.
and it's like, so obviously massive production, and you put this together. During this broadcast, at what point did you go like, "Okay, this is amazing." You can actually like, have a sort of sigh of relief.
That's a really good question. I'm one of those people who, yeah, I've used this reference before, but people look at what I do, or what people do in creative ops and producers and television, and everybody always sees the prize. They always see you win the Emmy. They always see something go viral. They always see that moment where you did a really good job. It's kind of like an iceberg. Like, you see the tip, but nobody
Yeah.
sees everything that's living underneath the water, which is the budget, the logistics, the legal, the contracts, the creative planning, the technical side to build all of this together and build it up. That's what it takes. So a lot of times, and this is on Extreme Makeover, on Shark Tank, and NASA, when I'm celebrating, it's on that flight home. It's when I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, did we just do that? Did that really just happen? And my bar for myself, I mean, there's no perfection, but my bar is perfection. Like, I am extremely critical. Anybody who knows me, who has worked with me, knows this implicitly about me. Like, eh, I'll typically give myself a B plus or an A minus, because it's really hard to give yourself that A or that A plus, because you nitpick it. You might not see all the things that went wrong or didn't go exactly right, but I know behind the scenes what was supposed to happen exactly the way I conceived it. So that's kind of my moment of celebration. I will, however, say that during the solar eclipse, I took probably exactly 11 seconds, and when the eclipse was passing over Cleveland, I took my headset off, I ran outside of the control room, and I looked up, and I really couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, it was darkness over Cleveland. You felt kind of this cold, you heard the
Yeah.
crowd around, like, it was something I had never experienced before, and it was kind of defining because I was sitting here informing, educating, entertaining, but also experiencing. And it was this really kind of life-changing moment. It one of those moments where you say, "I'm exactly where I need to be."
Yeah, yeah. I remember I was in South Africa growing up, and we had an eclipse there. I was young, and it didn't really sort of dawn on me. Dawn's probably the wrong word, but I didn't realize sort of how big it was. But I just remember things going really quiet. It's like as it came through, you can see the shadow coming, and it comes across, and it just goes really eerily quiet, and yeah, a little bit colder. It's a cool experience.
I recommend it for anybody if you're ever in the path of totality or near the path. Try to get out there. It's worth it at least once. And there are some people who chase it endlessly because it is that cool.
So I want to ask you about this big call because it does feel like a big call, and it reminds me a bit of like starting a business. And you take risks, and there's calls you make, and there's calls into the future. Making these decisions, these risks you're going to take, and you think like, yeah, if it pays off, it's going to be worthwhile. And it sounds like this Cleveland call was one where you probably had most people go, against that and say, why is Sammy making this decision? But how did you sort of like balance it out? I mean, I know you sort of mentioned like it's the right thing to do for NASA, which I think is, yeah, that makes sense. But what if it was cloudy? Were there workarounds? But yeah, I just tried to think about, yeah, because people always wonder about how do you make these big decisions that it, maybe it's a bit of gut feel or something. I don't know.
There's gut feel, there's instinct, but everything needs to be calculated, right? And you need, as a producer or anybody who's planning anything at scale, you need to have option A, B, and C. What people will never know is that we had our rain plan location inside the Great Lakes Science Center. If it was raining outside, we're going to put ourselves in an interior location and protect the production, and it's still going to happen. And instead of focusing on a lot of Cleveland telescope feeds because it's obscured, we might need to rely on focus on the images of the eclipse being mostly from the southern United States or wherever, hopefully, there's sunshine. But one thing I also learned as a producer is you can't there are things in your control and there are things that are completely out of your control. I used to try to control the weather on Shark Tank. I produced in the field for years and produced 350 different, field segments for the show, and you'd be filming on a farm and it's beautiful and serene and the best background you've ever seen, and then a crop duster starts flying above you. Like you can't control those things, and you just kind of have to laugh a little bit and you say, "Hey, this isn't brain surgery, right? This is television."
Yeah,
Then I joined NASA, and it was brain surgery. It was rocket science,
it's
right?
brain
So it
surgery.
is it is it is something big and important, but you can only control what you can control. When a rocket is launching, I plan the ideal scenario. I plan the scenario with the educational packages, with the interviews, with the celebrity inclusions. But what people don't know is we also have the plan for a bad day. If something doesn't go well, or if something is wrong with the launch vehicle, or if there's an abort scenario, there is a completely different direction that we have to take and go into crisis communications mode live. So I think that you just have to go into it prepared to know that, look, this is the best I can do with the information I know. And when I'm thinking about, can I guarantee the sun across 3,000 miles? No.
Yeah.
Is it safer to go to Texas or somewhere in the South? Yes. What would be more impactful for the audience and for the story we're trying to tell? Well, being kind of halfway on the path of totality and also being near a NASA center. So when that weighs just a little bit more, I put my efforts towards that. I sell it internally to NASA. I say, "I really think as a producer that this is the best call." And then obviously I hope that things will go my way, but I'm also prepared if they don't.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, it it also feels like there's it's a great time to be at NASA or be or have been part of this. I mean, you've got the whole Artemis project. There's so much going on. I mean, some of the lunar landings now, and sending people back to the moon, and it feels like there's just a great culture of like, yeah, we can go do this again. Does that help with these sort of projects as well?
I mean, the energy and the support definitely helps. You want to produce content that you know that people are watching, that they're enjoying, and that's resonating. And a place like NASA relies on public support. It relies on that public support influencing Congress and Congress getting behind it. And I would say the most beautiful thing about NASA is that it kind of lives above politics, partisan politics. It's a place where it's about the mission, it's about exploration, it's about discovery, it's about science. And I don't know anybody who doesn't look at that blue NASA meatball, as we call it, and get excited. That's why you see people wearing it on hats, on sweatshirts, on t-shirts. It's because everybody loves NASA. And I think there's a lot of reference to Apollo and these big moments for humankind. And what you're feeling now is what you're seeing all around. Like, it's kind of happening. There's a new space race for all humanity, right? We're going back to the moon and then on to Mars. You're seeing commercial companies come together as well, like SpaceX and Rocket Lab and Boeing and all of those, Intuitive Machines and Firefly. We're landing on the moon with commercial payloads. We're paving the way. Like, you're tangibly seeing these things happen at scale. And I think that that's really exciting. Like, soon we're going to have commercial space stations, and it's going to allow NASA to kind of go beyond low Earth orbit and explore deeper and farther. So there's a lot of potential. There's kind of a new Wild West frontier of production as I see it, and of content that will be coming our way. And I think the biggest challenge is going to be having people believe that it's all there and that it's all real, because we're in a different landscape now with AI and with everything else. And I think that people just need to continue to trust that what NASA puts out is authentic, is real, and we're really out there doing it. And I say we, even though I'm no longer there, because NASA is all of us, like, it is all Americans. It is all, inhabitants of Earth. It's for humankind. Everything NASA does benefits humanity. So I think it's a beautiful thing, and there's going to be a lot of excitement coming up, and that's what kind of the buzz that you're starting to feel.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how, someone can't be excited about the whole space exploration and just everything out there, and, how much we could still learn about it. I mean, just the context of, how small we are in the whole, in sort of the galaxy and all that. It just, I mean, and just getting to know a little bit around us. I mean, it's not even that much. I mean, it's just amazing. Um, but you were talking about the whole NASA brand, and I was watching the videos, and so something that always gets me is like on those YouTube videos, you've got the little ball spinning around the NASA logo. You can watch that thing for hours. It's just so like calming. But you were part of some rebranding at NASA. I mean, again, government body. It's a big agency. What was it like, and what did you do, and who'd you work with? It's a pretty big mission to undertake.
Yeah, and I'd say it's an evolution and it's a constant process. So NASA, I guess, has been going through this evolution and this rebrand through its entire existence. You see the initial seal, and then the meatball logo, and then in the 70s, the NASA worm, which you see right here, was created and very slick and modern. And then it went away, and now it's back. Um, and then it's also, how do we start looping in commercial partners? And I say all this to set the stage for, it's a really complex place. There's 10 NASA centers. There's production teams at each one. Everybody's focused on different projects. Like, obviously, at Kennedy, it's launching. In Houston, it's humans in space, it's astronauts. In at JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, there's a lot of planetary and Mars. So there's a lot of different focus groups, but it's a beautiful thing because they all come together and they're NASA. That's the way the public and the world sees NASA. But on the inside, there's a lot of different workflows. There's different music libraries. There's different content creation methods. Sometimes old graphics are still used that have been outdated. So one of the big things that I worked with our creative director and the engagement team with is how do we kind of bring all this together? One NASA, right? Like it's really important that what how the public sees us is the way that we also work on the inside. So starting to bring together these groups, it didn't happen overnight. It was a lot of relationship forming, getting to know the different editors and producers all around, lots of emails, lots of brand guidelines. Um, I introduced and brought in Frame as an editing tool agency wide so that we would have one kind of uh, editing suite that we could kind of check revisions with together. Before that, it
Mm.
was just a bunch of emails and sometimes a box link, sometimes a Vimeo link. Like we need one system
It's
because
amazing,
there's
right?
so much
Yeah,
content that we're producing. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I got behind getting us to Universal Music Library, production music, so that we would have one music library and avoid any licensing issues. Made sure that the enterprise had ShowFlow, which is a live production building tool so that we can all work together on any scripting we're doing or anything like that, so that we're all using the same things. We shouldn't be using a Google Sheets and someone using a show flow and somebody sending Word documents. No, we should all be under the same umbrella so we all have the same visibility. And then graphically, big campaigns like Launch America. This has actually happened just before I joined NASA, but it was a big rebrand of we retired the space shuttle in 2013. With SpaceX, we now have the capability to launch from US soil once again, and it needs to make a big splash. So NASA created Launch America. It's basically NASA working with SpaceX. So when you look at Launch America, it doesn't really scream NASA, it doesn't really scream SpaceX. It kind of tells a story of both. When we're launching humans to the space station with SpaceX or with Boeing, we have a Launch America graphics package, and we kind of wrap ourselves around that. The NASA bug lives there. That bug that you mentioned, that always
Yeah.
remains on any broadcast. But when we're building a broadcast with intuitive machines landing on the moon, we kind of have to incorporate their data-driven graphics and their needs. So we have to create a custom rebrand and package for them. Or with Firefly Aerospace, we have to continually work with our commercial partners to build a package that is representative of both, but also technically includes all the things we need to include. So if Firefly has this beautiful display with velocity and altitude and this little rover that's demonstrating what it's doing and landing on the moon, I want to incorporate that on the broadcast, but it has their color schemes and palettes and all of that. So we have to kind of join forces on a one-off to build something unique that still represents NASA and have those icons, the bug and kind of those mainstays so you know you're watching a NASA broadcast. Also, when NASA is doing something flagship, huge, Artemis, the solar eclipse, we have the opportunity to also steer a little bit away from what we call the NASA standard graphics package and kind of create a big splash. Artemis has these cool colors, these kind of bold
Mm.
purples and pinks and cool blues, and it's supposed to kind of look towards the future, and it has its own brand. But also important that people understand this is still NASA. It's not like a separate space company called Artemis. This is Artemis under NASA, but we're branding it this way to show you this is a really big deal, and we wanna get people excited about it, and those colors and those graphics can be used in different ways. The solar eclipse, what you see if you watch that broadcast is it looks like our NASA graphics standard package, but it has these eclipse colors and these sun
Mm.
hues and these yellows, and that was done very much on purpose to get people excited about that specific, flagship event. I mean, it only happens once in a while, so we really wanted to capture people's imaginations and attention. So, it's a constant kind of uh, checking and rechecking and checks and balances and making sure that everybody's using the same thing. You know, we had at one point a 3D meatball that was used 5 or 6 years ago, and we phased that out and retired it. Or sometimes the color of the meatball goes from the blue changes, and we want to make sure everybody's using the right blue. So there's a lot of work with our engagement team, the creative director, and making sure that everybody's getting the right tools. And it's a very hard thing to do at an agency with at the time 100,000 civil servants and contractors. You need to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And if there's one thing,
Oh, yeah.
if there's one thing that people love at NASA, it's logos and brands, and there's a logo for everything. There's an acronym for everything.
Very.
And I don't like to say policing, but you kind of have to be a logo cop because the meatball and NASA, that is the most important, and that's the one that everybody is tuning in to see. So let's start there and make sure that everybody is behind that that mission.
Yeah, so I actually have I'm just curious to find so the so calling it the meatball, the bug, um, is that standard naming or is that internal name? Is that just like the sort of nomenclature that people started using in the public?
It's started internally, and then these things bug is something that for all television, whenever you see like the CNN bug or the ABC bug, that's just
Great
this thing
description. I actually didn't
that's
know
burned in, right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the meatball, that's the iconic blue with the stars and the red swoosh.
Yeah.
That's what we call that logo. That is the official brand of NASA. And then the
Okay.
worm, that is the logo type, the super graphic, and that was created in the 70s, and it works really well on the side of a rocket, like the specific use cases for it that
Yeah.
it lends itself to. So that this is the logo type, the worm, and then the meatball is the other one. But yeah, you end up using a lot of acronyms, and a lot
Yeah.
of NASA has its own language. We'll say that.
That's brilliant. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about your past experience because I mean, this whole NASA thing is I mean, it's amazing. But you know, you with Extreme Makeover, Home Edition. I know, like in my, I don't know, like 10, 15 years, I can't even remember exactly when, but I was watching a bunch of these episodes with my wife when we sort of got to know it, and then Shark Tank. We have our own version, like Dragons Den in the UK. But how did that experience sort of like, you know, how did that link in with now? How do you feel like that sort of built up in your career and that storytelling? How does that connect through?
It's exactly what you said, storytelling and narrative. You have to start there. Like, the story is the most important. I always say this, but you could have a huge high budget production with all the bells and whistles and production and hundreds of millions of dollars, right on par with a documentary that doesn't have all that, and that's because the story is strong. So whether I'm telling a home building renovation type show or helping people's dreams get realized on Shark Tank, or telling the story of pushing the boundaries of human possibility at NASA, it's all a story. It's different, one's live and one the stakes are super high, and then the other ones we kind of have to create the stakes so that the audience gets
Mm,
a little bit invested. But the tool that I used throughout my entire career, and I've named at NASA the focal point at NASA, I like to call it T0. That's the moment. That's the moment you came to watch. It's the
yeah.
rocket launch. It's the landing. It's the splashdown. It's the solar eclipse. It's the moment we announce the next moon crew. That is the moment you came to watch.
Mm.
And if I sit here and think about a complex mission and everything I need to do to pull it off, like an eclipse, I'm gonna run for the hills because that's a lot. Everyone's gonna say no. Everyone's gonna say that's impossible or why. But you have to start somewhere. So you start at the moment that everyone came to watch, and then you build from there. So that's how I did it at NASA. On Extreme Makeover, that's the move the bus moment, right? Everybody wants to see
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
house looks like, but they also want to see the family's reaction to what the house looks like and their life changing. On Shark Tank, you tune into
I actually forgot about the whole move the bus, and I remember how everyone shouted, "Move that bus." Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
It sticks in your
And then on Shark Tank, it's the deal. You tune in because you want to learn about the product, but you want to see, is this person going to get a deal with Mark Cuban? How much is it going to get a deal with Barbara Corcoran or Kevin O'Leary? Like, you want to know if they're going to get it, if their life is going to be changed. So you start there. So it's a tool that I've used, and it's been fairly successful for me. Like, everyone has their own way of kind of producing, but for me, it's not linear. Like, I don't start at the beginning and end at the end. I kind of start at the middle. I kind of start at the moment where
makes
everybody wants
sense.
to watch, and I build out
Yeah.
from there.
That's a really good point. I mean, we we're a B2B brand, so sometimes it feels really hard to make a sort of a connection in a way. But we always think about our videos that we produce. It's not, it's product videos and so on, but it's like end to end. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some way we could you have a focal point in that video as well. Like, well, what is that? Whether it's the aha moment, we call them products and so on.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny on Extreme Makeover, there were a couple really one Extreme Makeover is filled with micro moments as well. There's the move the bus moment, but I got to do a lot of the field work, and there were two specific shoots that I produced and got to be a part of. One was this family we were helping in Buffalo, New York, and it was this Jamaican mother, and she had come to the States, and when she came to the US, she bought her first pair of shoes. The shoe story was huge. So we knew we need to incorporate the shoes. So what's going to create the most impact for her? It's like, well, what if we went to her old school in Jamaica and we donated a bunch of shoes to the kids there, who many are barefoot, most have never had their first pair of shoes. And we partnered with a shoe giving organization. We got the goods transported down there. I flew down to Jamaica, and my T0 moment, my focal point moment was honk honk. All the kids come running out and they get handed a pair of shoes. So I started with that,
Right.
and then we build out to release forms, and we build out to the greater story, and how are we going to do this, and what's it going to take, and budgets and charities, and how are we going to bring all of this in, and who's going to donate it. But you have to start at what is going to create the impact. This woman walks into her house, and before she sees it, Ty says, "There's something I want you to watch. Sit down on your sofa." And we turn on the TV, and she sees all the kids at her old school receiving these shoes for the first time, and just tears start streaming down her face. So it's like these impactful moments that you can create, but you have to start at the moment, like that's the moment that means everything. That's the T0 moment.
That's really smart. I think that's such a great idea. I'm definitely going to try figure out how we're going to use it internally here. It just makes so much sense. And yeah, and then you sort of just work out end to end. And I mean, do you and you obviously work with a team. I mean, do you run into disagreements about this focal point? How do you all like align on this specific point?
At NASA, it's easy because it's a rocket launch, or you know the moment
Yeah.
everyone's tuning in for. But I think that the greatest challenge somewhere like NASA is you have a lot of stakeholders. So I could tell you what would resonate really well for an audience in like an hour, including that rocket launch. But then there's all these requirements and mission operations and reasons why it needs to be extended to 3 or 4 or 5 hours, because we have to make sure we're broadcasting not just for the general public, but for the media and for others. So there is a little bit of a push and pull, because I want to make
Yeah.
sure that people aren't just scrubbing to watch that one moment and not watching the rest. So how do we keep people engaged if we're doing a 5-hour broadcast or an eclipse level broadcast? The reason we had people spread across the path is we weren't just focusing on Cleveland, we were showing across the entire continent. So you keep people engaged throughout. There were 13 different T0 moments along the path, and
Yeah.
kind of getting people excited for each one. And it's the same thing. You kind of have to decide what is going to make that moment special. When we
But I
announced the
think
moon crew, oh, go ahead.
yes, right. But I think on Eclipse, what you did well there was filming it from the reverse, and that was almost not a photo, but that was like that was quite that was unique. I don't know if anyone's done that before in such a production.
Yeah, that one was it was a big one to be able to show both sides, get the
Yeah.
excitement going, and you were in it, you were out of it. It didn't matter if you were on the path of totality or watching at home, you felt like you were a part of it. And that's what resonated.
Excellent. And so, I mean, have you seen any, just lately ads or shows that you feel like nail this focal point moment that you sort of talk about?
One that pops out to me is on the series scripted side by like the White Lotus. If you're watching that
Mm.
one, uh it's all about, somebody's gonna die. You know that before the season even starts. And it kind of starts at the end. And then you spend the entire series sitting there trying to figure out who's gonna die.
Who done it? Yeah, who's gonna die?
Yeah, and it's like and it's funny, and it's weird, and it's dramatic, and it's everything at once, but you can't stop watching because you're so focused on that moment, and that's one of those moments where you know it as the audience, the producers know it who put it together, and you're kind of part of this game the whole time, and I think that that's a really good example of, like, the T Zero moment. I think a company that is masterful at the T Zero moment is Apple. You know, like they do it better than anyone else, I think. Um, when you watch their product reveals, everything is built on those few seconds where they reveal the new iPhone or the AirPods or the iPad or whatever it is, and they build up to that and they do a beautiful job of blending it. Even looking back to old commercials like 1984, like their T Zero moment was that sledgehammer through the screen
Yeah.
and then building out from there. And then print ads like Shot on iPhone. It's this whole concept around this was made on your iPhone. That's a T Zero moment. This was shot on an iPhone. You can do this yourself and kind of making you get there in your mind, right? Like you look at it, you're like, "Ew, that's not possible. That can't be. Oh, wait, it is." Like it's simple, but it's brilliant.
I was speaking to a CMO the other day, and we were talking about the whole branding versus product marketing aspect of things. And he made an interesting point. Is like Apple, like fantastic brand, but a lot of what they do is product marketing, and obviously super well. And it's almost like they build in. They almost like think about that you know that T Zero moment. And we obviously didn't call it T Zero moment, but they have these moments they want, and they almost design the product. Marketing is built into the product from the get go, and I think it's just like the way they link it is just yeah, it's next level.
I think it's smart, and I think it's something that, can be incorporated in creative operations and in what I do. Like, it's the cause and the effect. You have to think about the outcome at the inception, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's really important. Something that I think something that I always tell people, like, how do you do this? How do you build these huge productions? How do you tell stories at scale? And I like to tell people, like, a lot of times these things come to me, like, I watched the solar eclipse in my head a year and a half before we did the solar eclipse, and then my job from that point on was to translate that vision to the hundreds and eventually thousands of people that would be involved in the project and got them all on board, and the communication was crystal clear, and everybody knew the expectations, and everybody saw it with me before we executed. And when I can get a team to that point, that's when I can relax just a little bit. It's like, okay, this no longer just lives in my brain. It lives in all of your brains too. And you are each doing your roles. Cause I'm not a master at the technical. I'm not a master like I know the teams to bring together to execute the vision, but I need to make sure that I plant those seeds appropriately and that everybody grows with me. And then we can make the beautiful thing happen.
So someone who's, who's keen to get into this career path. I mean, it feels like, you need to have a pretty strong creative sort of skill set, if that makes sense. You got to be strong creatively because you need that vision and so on. But any advice? I mean, because you went from medicine into creative production essentially. Um, and any advice for someone who's thinking about taking this as a career path?
I would say, it's if you're a creative person and if you have a vision, go for it. It's not the easiest path, but it's certainly worth it. And you need to have a little bit of a backbone. You need to be able to hear a lot of no's. You need to believe in the story you're telling. We're in a different landscape now with AI, with what we're seeing with streamers. It's no longer linear like it was years ago. It's now, we've got content creators from YouTube. We've got so much influencers. Like, it's a totally different landscape. But one thing that doesn't change is quality, taste. Those are things AI can't can't really reason with critically the way that humans can, right? Like, there is still, if you have a great idea, if there's taste in it, if there's quality in it, it will resonate. And I think it's just about forming relationships, continuing to network, continuing to build, using the tools at your disposal. Use AI, like learn all about it. See how those work as templates and can help enhance the work you're trying to do. Um, but I think that great stories and human-led stories, that's not gonna go anywhere. I think we're just gonna embrace the new tools at our disposal. And I think that it is an evolution just like we've seen in the past, when we leave radio and go to television, then we go to the digital age, and now we're streaming. Like there's constant evolutions, and we just have to learn how to use the tools around us and build off of those and build with them. So this can be a pretty unforgiving industry to be in, but it's also an extremely rewarding industry to be in. And it's something where your peers fundamentally understand the world that you're in because they're in it as well. And it's something where you just have to believe in yourself and the stories. And if you have a story to tell, please tell it because there are people who want to learn from it, who want to see it, and who want to enjoy it.
That's great advice, Sami. And Sami, if people want to follow you or get to know about more what you do, where can they find you?
My LinkedIn definitely works, and I've got that's just my name, Sami Aziz. You can find me on there. I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. I'll have my website launching soon as well. But any of those are easy ways to get in touch with me.
Sami, well, Sami, we are looking forward to seeing what you are going to do next. And I think it's been absolutely incredible. For anyone who wants to check it out, just go check out all the NASA videos. It's really entertaining. It's really good. But thank you so much for the conversation today.
Thank you, Ant. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sharing insights from around the marketing, tech, and operations industries on how marketing and creative teams can get more done together.